An individual's best understanding of history is compiled through their own research. And prior to the age of the internet, the primary method of collecting information was through literature, primarily in books. Even though now we're in the age of the internet, and people like myself produce videos placing information in an easily accessible free location, does not mean that books have lost their purpose in research, as those of us who produce such in-detail history videos still have to greatly rely on old literature. There are two primary reasons why books are still a great source compared with primary sources. Books offer another individual's interpretation of primary sources, and if you're careful about your selection of books, you will actually be buying not just another person's interpretation, but also reproduction of primary sources. A question I am commonly asked is references for specific books, and so today I've compiled a variety of books that cover the area of history I specialize in, and I will place forth a series of books that I think are great for people to use as a resource. Up first is this 8-volume set on Abraham Lincoln, produced in 1953 by the Abraham Lincoln Association. This is probably the best example I'll display in this video of a book that can be a primary source, as this 8-volume set is a faithful reproduction of all of Abraham Lincoln's existing letters, memorandums, speeches, and messages. Volume 1 kicks off with a letter dated the 26th of May, 1830, and Volume 8 ends on a letter dated the 14th of April, 1865, the day Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. So, as a result, this 8-volume set covers 35 years of Abraham Lincoln's own words. The upsides to this set are clear from a historical standpoint, but there is a significant downside that I do want to point out, and that is there are no responses to any of Lincoln's letters. These are just Lincoln's perspectives. Sometimes there are citations where the responder's message is placed in, but for the most part it is purely from Lincoln's point of view. Up next, I would like to recommend Lincoln's War, which was published in 2004 by Jeffrey Perrett. This book is rather straightforward. It begins on the 5th of March, 1861, the day after Lincoln's first presidential inauguration, and it ends on the 9th of April, 1865, when Robert E. Lee surrenders the Army of Northern Virginia at Appomattox Courthouse. This book is compiled using a lot of messages between Lincoln and a variety of his political and military subordinates, creating a story of the war through the executive office's perspective, primarily Lincoln's perspective. It shines a variety of bright lights on a series of controversial and political decisions made by Lincoln's administration in relation to the Civil War. Up next, I would like to recommend A Walker's Guide to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. This book is authored by David Gilbert, though published by the Harpers Ferry Park Association, with the 9th edition in specific beginning publication in 2022. Personally, I have multiple editions of this publication, but it is not just a walker's guide as the title suggests on the 9th edition, but it is also a good historical reference as it provides maps, plans, and arrangements of Harpers Ferry Lower Town. All of David Gilbert's books regarding Harpers Ferry are excellent books because they provide an endless series of primary sources and explanations to go along with them, and is just overall an excellent look into how Harpers Ferry operated during its prime. Up next, I would like to recommend Naval History of the Civil War by Admiral David D. Porter, with my copy being published in 1984. The reason I am recommending this book is self-explanatory by the author's name, as Admiral Porter served in the United States Navy during the American Civil War and is one of the most reliable men to discuss the war's naval operations at his own discretion. However, I must warn caution towards this book because if you are just a casual enthusiast of the naval operations of the American Civil War, you will not enjoy reading this book as it is nearly 1,000 pages long and is in small print. This book is only recommended for hardcore Civil War naval enthusiasts. Up next is USS Monitor, A Historic Ship Completes Its Final Voyage by John Broadwater, with the book beginning publication in 2012. As someone who is formerly employed at the Mariners Museum and Park, which is where the recovered sections of Monitor are being conserved and displayed, I had the honor of actually meeting John Broadwater on the 20th anniversary of the turret's recovery, and he gratefully signed my book. John Broadwater was formerly an employee of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and was a key figure in the recovery of Monitor's engine and turret. This book discusses Monitor's service history, its sinking, but for the most part discusses the recovery of the wreckage. It is a thoroughly detailed account from a very reliable source, and that is why I recommend it. Up next is the Yamato Class and Subsequent Planning, Volume 3, by Hans Lingerer and Lars Alderberg. This book was freshly printed when I ordered it in 2021. Much like Admiral Porter's book, I do not recommend this for casual enthusiasts. This is only for hardcore researchers, as it is a detailed breakdown of the design of all 4 Yamato-class battleships, and it also goes over the sinking of Yamato and Musashi in detail in this 550-page book. As the title implies, this is the 3rd volume out of a 3-volume set. Unfortunately, I have not been able to obtain the first 2 volumes, though, to my understanding, they cover capital ships and shelling operations from the beginning of the Japanese Navy up to World War II. So if anybody is fortunate enough to find the first 2 volumes, I highly recommend them, solely based off my experience with the 3rd volume. Up next I have a duo, The Battleship Arizona, An Illustrated History by Paul Stilwell, published in 1991, and The Battlecruiser HMS Hood, An Illustrated Biography by Bruce Taylor, published in 2004. These books have no connection to one another. The only reason I am placing them together in this video is because they are, in arrangement, very similar to one another, as they cover these 2 warships' histories in very thorough detail, providing an instrumental amount of photographs and diagrams, while also discussing their ends in a rather unbiased approach. Of course, Arizona and Hood are some of the greatest names in maritime history, and as a result, these 2 ships are well deserving of these very long but very good reads. Up next, I have The Japanese Navy and World War II in the Words of Former Japanese Naval Officers, 2nd edition, which was published in 1986, with the 1st edition being published in 1969. This book provides 20 unedited accounts from Imperial Japanese Navy officers that served during the Second World War, starting with the Pearl Harbor operation and ending with Japan's naval defeat. These 20 officers provide a very rare insight within the workings of the Japanese Navy and the perspective of Japan's operations, as in general, we're used to seeing the perspective of the Pacific War from the Allies. Up next, I have The Battleship Builders, Constructing and Arming British Capital Ships by Ian Johnston and Ian Buxton, which was published in 2013. This book approaches battleship construction from an unusual perspective, mainly looking at finances, manufacture, and manpower. If any one of those categories were to collapse, battleships could not be constructed in great numbers, and this book shows how Britain managed to hold the entire infrastructure together in the years leading up to the First World War. It then discusses First World War naval construction programs, and then looks into the relaxing of naval construction as a result of the Washington Naval Treaty and later British battleship designs and possibilities of construction. Just like Admiral Porter's and the Yamato book, you cannot be a casual reader in order to take this book on. You must be very enthusiastic about the construction of warships. Up next, I have RMS Mauretania, Queen of the Ocean, 1907, by David Hutchins, and this was published in 2019, so it's one of the newest books that I am presenting today. I would go as far to consider this quite possibly the best book ever written on an ocean liner, as it provides an endless series of primary sources into the construction and operation of the ship, while also providing a seemingly endless amount of first-hand accounts from people whom either served or crossed the Atlantic on Mauretania. It also dedicates an extensive amount of time to Mauretania's service in the First World War, which is something that is often glossed over. Like the previous book, this is not recommended for casual enthusiasts. You must be a hardcore researcher. It is long, it is detailed, and it provides very little imagery. To finish this video off, I would like to recommend another duo. The Big Ship, The Story of the SS United States by Frank Brainard, 2nd edition, which was published in 2011, and The SS United States, The Story of America's Greatest Ocean Liner by William Miller, which was published in 1991. When it comes to books on the United States, there are no definite publications in my opinion. Different books have different details that provide different information to the ship's design and operation, but out of the ones I have read, these two are the ones I would consider the best, but they go well hand in hand, though they were published separate from one another. An interesting detail I would like to point out about my copy of William Miller's book is that it is actually signed by Commodore Leroy Alexanderson, whom was the United States' captain. As a result of that signature, this book has become one of my favorite in my collection, and I have a bias towards it, but I do want to point out that besides covering just the United States, it also covers the SS America, which was United States' smaller predecessor. So, upon recommending these two books, The Big Ship is what I would consider to be the more detailed for hardcore researchers, while The Story of America's Greatest Ocean Liner is less detailed, and so it is better for a casual enthusiast, though it is still a relatively lengthy read. With that, that is all of the books I am going to recommend for today. If you find any of these recommendations interesting and you intend to buy one, let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in me making another video recommending another set of books, as trust me, I have plenty more I can recommend, also let me know in the comments below. But with that, I have nothing more to say for today. So, if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.